And welcome back. Well, Kyle told you a little bit previously about Dune Part 2, and now I thought I might tell you a little bit about what I thought about this film. Now, I'll admit that way back in 2020, when it was announced that Denis Villeneuve was going to be bringing the Dune Odyssey to the screen, I was one of those people that was a little bit nervous because I'm a fan of the novels, but I've never ever been a fan of what people have done when they've tried to bring those novels to the screen. But if people were listening to our show back then, they will know that I found the original Dune film from Denis Villeneuve to be an absolute masterpiece. This film, to me, changed the way that we will see sci-fi get filmed from now on. This is like the Blade Runner of the Star Wars of our generation. It's such a different way to film sci-fi, and I think he did an absolutely amazing job. Now, that left me a little bit nervous, though, because the first film was so good. My first thought was, how is Villeneuve going to live up to that with the second film? How is he going to make this second film a worthy sequel to the original? But I'm happy to say he definitely does that. Now, this film begins with Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, trying to fit into life with the Fremen people with really mixed results. On one hand, there's people like the warrior Silgar, played by Javier Bardem, who believes that Paul is the foretold Messiah. But then there's Chani, played by Zendaya, and her friends who believe that's just an old wives' tale. It's rubbish. There is no Messiah. And some of her friends don't even believe that Paul should be allowed to stay with them on their planet. And then there's the spiritually gifted Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, who's pushing the idea with the religiously minded Fremen that Paul is the Messiah, while Shani herself is battling her romantic feelings for him. Meanwhile, the Emperor, played by Christopher Walken, is trying to hide the fact that from the rest of the universe that he was responsible for the genocide of the Atreides family, while Baron Harkonnen, played by Stellan Skarsgård, is frustrated that Beast Rabban, played by Dave Bautista, is making no headway in getting rid of the Fremen people, so he's turned to Fade Rayutha, played by Austin Butler, to take on the deadly mission. Now, I've got to give credit here to Austin Butler, because watching this movie, I had no idea that was him behind the mask. I've got to say, I initially thought that it was someone completely different, and then, yeah, as the film went on, when I found out it was Austin Butler, I was like, wow. Having watched this guy in Masters of the Air at the moment, so it was interesting because when I watched him in Elvis, I was like, yeah, he's a good actor. Maybe he's got a career ahead of him. I watched him in Masters of the Air, and I'm thinking, absolutely brilliant. Now I've seen him in this, and I'm like, wow, this kid can act. In a way, he's like Timothée Chalamet in the sense that he just totally evolves into the character that he's playing. Now, as you can tell from that little bit that I just said about the plot, there's a lot going on in this movie, and a lot of it is really in-depth. So I really take my hat off to Villeneuve and the screenwriter John Spahidis, who have really brought this film together in a way that it's actually fairly easy to understand. You would think with such a complex storyline it might be hard to understand, but it's actually not. It does feel like a cross between Game of Thrones and Star Wars, and that mix works amazingly well. Now, what I feel sets this franchise apart from so many other films in the sci-fi genre is the fact that Villeneuve and his cinematographer, Greg Fraser, who was in the Batman, who did the cinematography for the Batman, I should say, they're willing to take some really big risks with the way this film is presented. In the first film, we kind of saw the decision to portray the Fremen's planet in a near washed out yellow haze for most shots. And this time they kind of take that even further. We have this amazing battle that Austin Butler's character is involved in, and their planet is almost depicted in black and white. And to me, that's the reason why when you're watching this movie, you feel that as an audience member, you've been transported into this world, onto those planets. If you think about the fact when you travel around the globe, light changes. Like even here in Victoria, if you go from Melbourne and you go up to Brisbane, the light is a little bit different, and that's something that quite often in film we don't see, but that's something here that really works. And like I said, it makes you feel like you've been transported into that world. Then there's the fact that Villeneuve is this really talented filmmaker who can just get an ounce of suspense out of every single scene. Doesn't matter in this film whether it's an epic battle, whether it's two characters kind of having an emotionally filled discussion, you really feel that suspense and tension that's there all the time, and you just realize what an amazing storyteller he is. That genius even comes to light when you realize that he's not frightened to time jump with this film. Of course, we all know that Dune, the story is it's a lengthy one, so Villeneuve will do this thing in Dune Part 2 where you'll suddenly have the characters will be talking about doing an event, and then the film will jump to after the event. And normally that would make you feel pretty ripped off as an audience member, but it doesn't here. It works so well that, and he needs to do that to like tone the film back and to make this not run for 4 hours per film in this trilogy, and he does that really, really well. The other key to this film working so well is the casting as well. I've already mentioned Timothée Chalamet playing Paul. This kid is just such an amazing actor. I mean, to think the last film he made before this was Wonka. He did another movie last year where he played a cannibal. It's just, this kid, everything he does, he just evolves into that character and makes that character so well. It's just, I just can't believe what a great young actor he is turning out to be. At one point in this movie, he actually yells at Jessica, and he does it with such a power with his voice and with such emotion that the audience jumps. I already mentioned Austin Butler, but I'm going to mention him again. He is just, again, he's like Timothée Chalamet. He's really showing in this movie, he's taking his acting to a whole new level. Javier Bardem and Zendaya are brilliant this time around as well. And the thing that makes this film so special is even in the smaller roles, there are top-notch actors and actresses like Florence Pugh and Charlotte Rampling. Their characters don't get much screen time this time around in this film, but they bring their A game to it as well. Look, Dune Part 2, like I said, I was worried going into this that there was no way that it could be anywhere near the original, and I was wrong. This is a franchise now that is really changing the way that we look at sci-fi and the way that sci-fi is presented on the screen. I know it's a big call, but I was only a young kid when Star Wars came out, and I remember the excitement around, like, for myself, but also the excitement for some of my friends who were a bit older and for family members about Star Wars and just how good that trilogy was. Well, I'm feeling the same way now about Dune. I was excited but scared about this film coming out because I was worried that it couldn't match the brilliance of the first. It has. If anything, it's exceeded that. But that aside, now I am looking forward to an absolute masterpiece for number 3. So this franchise now, I believe, deserves to be listed up alongside Star Wars and the great sci-fi trilogies. So I know I've already done this once tonight where I've given a film 5 stars, but I'm giving 5 stars to Dune Part 2 as well because it is just absolutely amazing. It is showing in most cinemas, so check your local cinema guide and go out and check out Dune Part 2 because this is just science fiction at its absolute best.